the brain glitch that reveals you're not in control. We all like to think we're in the driver's seat, that every choice we make, from grabbing a coffee to changing jobs, is a product of our conscious will. This feeling of being the author of our own lives is one of the most fundamental human experiences. It's the bedrock of our laws, our morals, and our very sense of self. But what if that feeling of control isn't the whole story? What if science suggests that your brain starts making up its mind long before you do? It's a discovery that might make you question everything you think you know about making a decision. You probably think you just chose to watch this video. But what if I told you that scientists have found brain activity that seems to predict that kind of choice up to 7 seconds before you're even aware of making it? Think about the last time you checked your phone without really meaning to, or felt a wave of emotion before you knew why. That wasn't just some random impulse. It might be a clue to a startling truth about how our brains operate, raising the question, who's really in the driver's seat? Section 1. The ghost in the machine. Our story starts not with a philosopher, but with a neuroscientist named Benjamin Libet. In the 1980s, he ran a series of experiments that sent shockwaves through science and philosophy that are still felt today. The setup was pretty simple. He asked volunteers to do just one thing: flick their wrist whenever they felt the urge. That's it. While they did this, Libet used an EEG to measure their brain's electrical activity. He was looking for a specific signal called the readiness potential, a buildup of neural activity in the motor area of the brain that happens right before a voluntary movement. It's your brain, quite literally, getting ready to act. But Libet added a brilliant twist. He put a special clock in front of the participants and asked them to note the exact moment they first became consciously aware of their decision or urge to move. The results were astonishing. Libet found that the readiness potential, this unconscious brain activity, started on average about half a second before the person actually flicked their wrist. But here's the kicker. People only reported their conscious decision to move about 200 milliseconds before the action. Let that sink in. For a good chunk of time, the brain is already preparing to act, completely under the radar of conscious awareness. This suggested that the conscious feeling of making a decision, that I will move now moment, might not be the starting pistol we think it is. Now, this interpretation sparked a massive debate that's still raging, with some scientists questioning what the readiness potential truly represents. But for decades, these findings have pointed to a profound idea. A huge amount of what our brain does happens unconsciously, before we're ever aware of an intention to act. Section 2. The 7-second echo. For years, Libet's findings were debated and retested. Some argued the time gap was too small, maybe just an error in measurement. But then, modern technology took this whole concept to a wild new level. In 2008, a team led by John Dylan Haynes used an fMRI machine, which tracks blood flow to see which parts of the brain are active. In this new experiment, people were asked to decide whether to press a button with their left or right hand. The results didn't just support Libet's findings, they were mind-boggling. By analyzing brain scans with machine learning, the researchers could predict which button a person would press. The truly shocking part wasn't that they could predict it, but when. They found predictive signals in the frontopolar cortex, a region at the very front of the brain, a full 7 to 10 seconds before the person felt they had made a choice. Now, let's be clear. This wasn't a crystal ball. The prediction was only about 60% accurate, so it's not like the brain had made a final, unchangeable decision. It's better to think of it as an early, unconscious bias or leaning. Still, imagine that. For up to 10 seconds, your brain activity is whispering a hint of your future decision to a scientist with a scanner, all while you're still blissfully unaware. These patterns suggested that the initial spark of a choice might begin in the unconscious depths of the brain, long before it ever bubbles up to the surface of conscious awareness. A follow-up study even found similar results for more abstract choices, like deciding whether to add or subtract two numbers. Again, brain activity predicted the choice up to 4 seconds before the person knew what they were going to do. Not with perfect accuracy, but significantly better than chance. Section 3. The brain's autopilot. So what on earth is going on? Are we just biological puppets whose strings are pulled by unconscious forces? Is free will just a trick of the mind? Well, it's complicated. A more popular way to look at it is that this isn't about taking away our control, but about making us more efficient. Think about the sheer volume of information your brain juggles every second. Some old estimates, which you can take with a grain of salt, suggest that while your conscious mind handles maybe 40 bits of information per second, your unconscious is a supercomputer processing millions. To keep from being totally overwhelmed, the brain automates a ton of tasks. Think about driving. When you were learning, every action was painfully conscious. Now, you can drive home while thinking about dinner, with your brain handling the steering, braking, and accelerating on autopilot. The same goes for countless other behaviors. Ever walk into a room and completely forget why you're there? Some researchers call that the doorway effect, linking it to how our brains create memory snapshots based on context. Changing rooms can cause a mental refresh that makes us forget our previous intention. What about feeling your phone vibrate in your pocket, only to find there was no notification? That phenomenon is thought to be an example of your brain's predictive systems honed by habit, creating a physical sensation based on what it expects to happen. These experiments suggest many of our free choices might be a bit like this. They arise from complex, unconscious computations where your brain weighs past experiences, current needs, and environmental cues, and starts to lean toward a decision. That lean is the early brain activity scientists can see. When the activity gets strong enough, it crosses a threshold into your conscious awareness, and you experience that aha moment of choice. Section 4. Are we doomed? The power of the veto. This might still sound pretty bleak for our sense of agency. If our brains are setting things up behind the scenes, what does that mean for personal responsibility? This is where the debate gets really interesting. Even Benjamin Libet, the man who kicked off this whole hornet's nest, didn't think he'd proven free will was an illusion. Instead, he proposed a different kind of power. Maybe we don't have free will, but we have free won't. Remember his timeline? The conscious urge appeared about 200 milliseconds before the action. Libet argued that in this tiny window, our conscious mind could act as an editor. The unconscious brain proposes an action, but the conscious mind retains the power to veto it. You might not be able to consciously start the impulse to grab that extra cookie, but you might have the power to see that impulse arise and consciously say, nope. There is some evidence from other studies on action cancellation that supports this idea, showing that people can indeed stop a planned movement right up until a point of no return, which happens just before the action itself. Of course, just like the initial findings, the conscious veto is still a hot topic of scientific debate, but it suggests our freedom might not lie in generating every urge out of thin air, but in choosing which ones to act on and which to discard. Thinking about it this way is actually pretty empowering. It means the key to being in control isn't about forcing decisions from scratch, but about cultivating awareness. It's about learning to watch the stream of thoughts and urges your subconscious serves up, and then consciously choosing how to respond. It's the difference between being swept away by a river and learning how to steer your boat. And that's a skill you can practice. So what do you think? Does this idea terrify you, or does it empower you? What little brain glitches do you notice in your own life? Let me know in the comments below. Conclusion. The science here challenges our simple, intuitive sense of control. Our experience of being a single self, the sole author of our actions, appears to be a much more complex and collaborative process than we ever imagined. Studies show that the initial stirrings of a choice can be detected in the silent, unconscious depths of the brain seconds before we know anything about it. But this doesn't have to be a grim verdict on human freedom. It's an invitation to become a better observer of your own mind. By understanding this so-called glitch, you gain a new level of self-awareness. You can learn to spot the unconscious urges as they arise and use your conscious mind to choose your response. You may not control every thought that pops into your head, but you have power over the one that comes next. And in that small, powerful gap between impulse and action, a whole new kind of freedom might just be waiting. If you enjoyed this trip into the mysteries of the mind, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. We're just getting started.